Hey guys, how you doing? So I've just come in from my latest over the board game. I thought I'd make a quick video and bring you up to date on what happened. So I should say that I'm at the end of the second day of a 3-day fast in preparation for a liver and gallbladder flush that I'm doing tomorrow. But nevertheless, let's go through the game. So I'm playing Wood Seats D. My opponent, John Ferguson, is a bit higher rated than me, and he opens with the thing I hate to see, the English opening. So I admit every now and again when I see the English on the board, like in a blitz game, I'll just abort because I really don't have a good response to it. So I thought about playing the Anglo-Dutch with pawn to f5, but then I thought I really don't know my theory enough. I'm going to go principled, so I push e5. Opponent brings out his knight, and I now play bishop out to c5. And after the game we discussed that he said that's meant to be an inaccuracy, but I'm not doing computer analysis at this point. We're just going to work through it. Okay, so he prepares to fianchetto his bishop with pawn to g3. I push d6 now that my bishop's outside the pawn chain. And my idea, if he fianchettos, particularly if he castles, I want to try and dislodge that bishop with my own light squared bishop, backed up by the queen. He does fianchetto, so I play my knight out to c6, and we have pawn to e3. So at this point, my main focus is I'm thinking about he's going to be playing d4 at some point. But I also noticed that the c4 pawn that he pushed at the start is undefended, so I play my bishop out to e6, and he takes actually quite a long time over this. I'm taking my time as well at this point because I know I have to focus on playing principled rather than relying on any theory, because there ain't none. Okay, so he defends with the b pawn. I play my queen to d7. It's a very typical idea about dropping my bishop in here and removing this guy, leaving weaknesses on the light squares in the corner there. He plays his knight out, knight g to e2, and I have a think about it because I still don't know which side I'm going to castle. I know that this bishop's looking down at this side of the board. I'm expecting this bishop at some point to come to b2 and be looking down here as well. So I'm really not quite sure. So I play my knight out as well to e7, so that I have the option of pushing f5 should I wish. Might still long castle, might start a pawn storm up the king side. He castles, and so I have a think it's time just to drop the bishop in now and try and get rid of that guy. Sorry. So I really don't want him to take out my knight and keep his bishop on the board. And now d4 comes. So, I don't want to drop my bishop back because why didn't I drop my bishop back? I guess he can attack the bishop again, and this is a good bishop. It's on the king's diagonal. So I figure I have to take. He recaptures, and now I drop back, and we both have a good think. At this point, I figure out he can't actually push either of these two pawns here. If he pushes this one, then I can just improve my knight to e5, and I feel like that's good, and my bishop now has a clear line, and this pawn here is pinned by the bishop, so I don't think that's going to happen. And if this one I can take, and I win the pawn, he could exchange queens and I lose castling rights, but I figure I've won a second pawn at that point. Or am I up a pawn? Not sure. I think I am. Okay, so anyway, he plays rook to e1, and I am worried about this move because I want to retain the option to castle queenside, even though he's got quite advanced pawns up there. But I'm more worried about this bishop coming and then this pawn pushing forward. And if my king's on g8, I just didn't know. So I take out the bishop. First of all, king takes, and now I castle. And now we get to the interesting part of the game. He plays his knight out to f4. and he's hanging this pawn, right? So I notice he's hanging the pawn. I assume he knows he's hanging the pawn, but I couldn't really see a problem. I had the option of taking with the bishop, kind of pinning this knight on the rook here. But I decided to take with a knight. The good thing about that as well is it gives my queen the c6 square with a possible check if I need it. Okay, he now comes in with his other knight to d5. And he's looking at my bishop. And of course my king is castled that side. I really don't want that. So I take, he takes. And now I notice that this diagonal is on. So I play my queen now to c6, pinning the knight on the king. Right, so he drops his king back to g1, which unpins the knight. The knight is now free to move, and I notice there is the threat of a royal fork here, defended by the rook. So what would you do? Pull my king back to b8, getting rid of the fork. The knight is not pinned at all. And here I'm kind of calculating, well, what if he does this anyway? And I notice that I have knight f3 with check and a fork, but also my queen is on prise. So if I play this straight away, he moves his king, I can't just take the rook because I lose my queen. And then I thought, well, I could have queen to f3, proposing a trade of queens. He can't take, because then I take with a knight, and the fork is back on. So we'll lose the exchange there. Okay. But he doesn't play that move. Okay. He surprises me. He plays knight takes b6, eliminating my good bishop. And now I have a think. And I thought, well, obviously I can recapture the knight with either pawn or the queen. But then I thought, well, what if I do this move? Okay, it's the fork is there. And so his king is going to have to move. Queen can't capture because it's guarded. So if I come in, his king is going to have to move to one of these three squares. Now, if it's this one or this one, I can then win the rook with a discovered check from the queen. So I figure if I come in here, he's going to move there, but then surely I have a free pawn with check again. And then if the king comes here, I can bring a rook across to the open file, and I'm looking okay there. Noticing that he's just got no bodyguard now around the king. Okay, so that's how it goes. I go in now thinking I've probably got time to recapture the knight later. He does go to f1, and here it all falls apart really. Knight takes h2 check, king moves back, I come back with the check and the fork again, king goes back to f1. And now I decide to eliminate the rook, and he's got a choice here of queen takes or king takes. Either way, I still know that I have queen h1 check. He captures with the queen, and I dive straight into h1 with check, forcing the king to e2. Then I bring my rook across, thinking that's actually a game winner. But I fail to spot that he has bishop e3, blocking the check. So we trade queens, and he recaptures with a king. I'm not sure about this move, because he's leaving his king on the open file. I don't know whether it would have been better to recapture with a rook and then get the king out of the way. But he recaptures with the king, and now I regain the knight. So I am up an exchange and 2 pawns at this point. So it's the pawn I won over here and also the h-pawn. So feeling very good. I'm also up on the clock. He brings his rook across, and now I push my pawn to c5. I figure that I'm quite safe here. I've got a pawn majority on either side of the board. I've got 4 on 3 here and a 3 on 2 there. I just need to make sure I don't screw up. My opponent now digs in. He's determined to try and provoke a blunder or whatever if he can. King goes over to f1. I push h6 just to take 1 square away from the bishop. I know that I've got the option of putting my pawns on light squares, ghosting them from the bishop so the bishop can't see them. But here I figure that there's enough pawns on the board, there's enough pieces still on the board that it's probably worth just trying to cramp the bishop's style a bit. Okay, he pushes a3, and I play my king into c7, figuring the king is quite safe there, and I'm not too worried about these pawns coming down because I've got spare material to eliminate them. Plays his king to g2. Now I pull my rook up here. So I've got ideas about maybe rook to g6, push Harry up the board. It's just defending this pawn, it's extra defending that one. Okay, he pushes the pawn forwards. I am unflustered. I figure if he pushes, that's fine, we've just locked everything off. And I've got two b pawns to take care of Andy if he comes down. His rook now comes across. Now my rook is guarding this one, so I'm okay there. And so f5. And my plan is bring my rook over here, advance the pawn, and the pawn can't take because then I recapture with a discovered check and I'm hitting the bishop. So that would be winning. His bishop retreats. I play rook g8 anyway. King comes forward. And now I play rook there. Now this was a mistake. Can you see why? My opponent did. He captures on g5. I can't recapture because I've pinned my own rook here. So a bit of a boo-boo from Hunty. So I play my rook now up. Notice this pawn is undefended. However, I mean, I was looking at this anyway. I was looking at this idea of taking the pawn because the rook can't come across and defend the pawn. The king can't get there, and it's on the wrong colour for the bishop to defend. But after this move, I play this anyway. But then I realise, actually, well, now the bishop's vacated the c1 square, the rook can come across the c1 and defend, but he can't, because he has to maintain the pin here. If the rook was to come across here, I simply win the bishop. No good. So he plays his bishop here to harass my rook. I'll just push it forward to h7. It's kind of nice having the rook and the king on the same rank as well, so that there's no real danger of his rook dropping in, and my rook's on a light square. He comes across now targeting f5, so he's really fighting. I grab the pawn, he grabs the pawn, and now I bring my king across. I thought about rook f7 instead, kind of trying to pin the bishop and gain material, but I figured this is actually a king fork. Right, the only way to defend the bishop would be to drop back, but then I can take it out and then win the bishop. Now he spots this and retreats the bishop to the b2 square. I bring my king into e6 anyway. Generally a good idea. Get your king up and close to a rook if you can. And he comes down with check, supported by the bishop. I drop back. He comes across to g6, and I just start pushing Harry up the board. Comes into g8. I give check. Now here, I'd been planning this. I knew this move was coming. Now, I knew that, for example, he can't go here because I can then move my rook to c2, hitting the bishop, and once the bishop moves, I can capture this with either rook and with check. Okay, now the bishop can't defend the pawn because it can't come to this square. Right, there's an advantage of having my pawns on the dark squares. Okay, that's the square he does go to, but also I figured out, well, he can't go here because of the rook, he'd be in check. And so it leaves only really these two squares. If he comes to this square, then I have a rook fork on king and bishop. So I figured the only square he actually had was e3. But he played king to g2 anyway, so I come up, and this is effectively a fork because I've got now a kind of battery against this pawn, and I'm also hitting the bishop, so he has to move his bishop right into the corner. I capture with check, he comes down, I hit his rook, thinking I'm going to win material. He comes back with check, and now I drop my rook from f2 back down here, and he's kind of stuck. If the rook moves, either win the rook or the bishop, so he trades off. Bishop retreats, and now king g6. Just making sure that there's no way this pawn is getting through. I can just sit there quite happily. Both pieces are on light squares. He's only got a dark squared bishop. it's not going to last much longer. His king comes forward, I push on, bishop comes down, and b5. And at this point, with less than 5 minutes on the clock, I've got 45 minutes on the clock, my opponent resigns. So there you go. So let's go back to the start. I'll stick the fish on, and we'll go through. Okay, so slightly fancies white, and maybe inaccurate there. We'll see. Okay, white is still better. I'm just really looking at the eval at this point. Knight there, which is decent. Good move from white here. And bishop to there, white is now +1. Okay, best move, bishop b6. Pinning the knight. Well, not really pinning it. Okay, so bishop out. He pushes that pawn. He said after the game he thought that was maybe a mistake, I'm not sure. Okay, we're still fairly even. And now we're not. Knight f3 would have been a better move. He plays this. And now it's saying bishop h3 immediately. Okay, I don't do that. And this is a blunder. Why is it a blunder? Because it allows d4. If he'd have played d4, that would have been very strong at that point. He didn't do that. He castles instead, and his advantage is gone. Seems like that was the only opportunity. So what should I have done here? It's saying bishop h3 would have been equal for black there. So here, if bishop h3, then is d4 not playable? Well, the bishop's hanging, so it prevents that idea. Okay, so he should have played d4 here. He doesn't. He castles, so he's only slightly better now. I drop in, still white is slightly better, and now d4 is not a big threat. So why would it have been so bad here? I mean, if let's say I take and take, as happened in the game. It's still saying bishop h3 is the best move, targeting this undefended piece. But I'm giving up my own bishop. Long castles is an idea. Bishop b4. But bishop b4 is only the 5th best move here. And he's also threatening the fork as well. So I know I was worried about d4 coming, but I didn't expect it to... I guess I thought I could handle it there. Interesting. So anyway, I come in. Now he pushes d4, but it doesn't work. It's saying I should have taken on g2 first. I don't. I take here, and that's inaccurate. Now what he should do is take my bishop and allow my queen there. Of course he doesn't do that. He takes here. I drop back, and white is better. Bishop takes g2 would have been preferable here. Trading the bishops now. And threatening the rook. Bishop b4 was the next best move. Or bishop b6. Bishop b6 equal now. Okay, now rook comes across, so he should have taken here again, according to the machine, but you know, machine logic. Fish think, who knows. Okay, and now it says I should take on g2 or castle. I take on g2. We are equal. Long castles is best. We are equal. And this was a mistake. So it's gone from 0 to -2.3, roughly. Because he's basically given up the pawn. I take the pawn, and now, yeah, plus 4.6. Oh, what? This was a blunder. If rook takes e7, queen takes e7, what? Now knight f to d5, knight f to d5. Queen d7 is the best move. Now he takes on b6. A takes b6. And it's +5 here. And my knight is lost. Wow, so he's got 2 minor pieces for a rook, basically. Wow, who would have calculated that? Anyway. So why is that? So if rook takes here... Right, okay, so the knight comes in with a fork on queen and bishop. And the bishop, I've got to move the queen, and the bishop is the only defender of this knight. Okay. Yeah, and then that would have been very good for him. Fortunately, he did not find that. He comes in with his knight and gives up his whole advantage. Knight takes d5 is the best move. Knight takes d5 is the best move. And now knight to f5, it's saying. Or knight to e6. Blocking the rook. Okay, I don't do that. I play the pin, and again, wow, a blunder. And the reason is he has rook e4. And what have I got here? So he can't capture. It's saying I should play my rook over. It's trading a rook for 2 minor pieces. Yeah, rook takes, bishop takes, pretty much forced, queen takes. And again, he's got the rook and 2 minors for 2 rooks. And it's saying it's +5. Even though this knight is, even though this knight is still pinned. Weird. Okay, but that is not what happened in the game. This is how chess goes. Okay, so I do the pin, and this is where he has a real think. So this would have been overwhelming the knight, and he's got the ability to take out the defender of the knight. But that's a tricky one to find. Okay, so he retreats the king, and now king b8, yeah, is the third best move. He's still saying this, maybe slightly better, but it's very marginal. Okay, and now I suspect whatever happens next is definitely a mistake. Knight to here is a mistake because knight f3 is best. King h1 needed to be played. That would have given up an exchange. But now knight h2, yeah, king has to come back again. And now it's saying take the knight. Or knight h2 check again, but we're not going to do that. Knight takes there is not in the top 5. Because I've just given away a whole load of... Wow! Look at this stuff, guys. What it's saying now is he can retreat his knight. He can retreat his knight to safety, leaving him with... Well, then I guess... Oh, wow, my knight has got no escape. My knight can't get out. Wow, I didn't think that one through. Okay, but he grabs the knight, and now he's lost. Wow, crazy stuff. Okay, a takes b6 is best. Queen h1 check is almost as good. Here. Now I thought about queen h5. I just couldn't see what would happen after that. It's saying that, but rook he8 is just as good. There we go. Bishop e3, best move. And now queen h5. But it's still totally winning now. And I take the knight, and the rest, as we say, is history. But isn't that fascinating? Absolutely fascinating. So if I go request a computer analysis now, let's have a look at the shape of the game. And yeah, I've downloaded the PGN already because I sent him a copy. Okay, let's see what's the... Whoa, okay, so look at these 3 peaks here. And potentially, yeah, another mistake, another blunder there. Fascinating stuff. Well, there you go. So my opponent did have some advantages, but I do find that when you're playing these longer time formats, it's I don't know. Sometimes you will just tend to play slightly on the conservative side, and in this instance, it worked out pretty well for me. So I'll take a win against a high-rated opponent. Okay, thought you might find that interesting. It's definitely some curious tactics there, but shows you how good the fish is. Okay, that'll do. Thanks for watching. See you later.